Hey guys, welcome to book review number 21. This week I'm going to be reviewing Gordon Cope's So We Sold Our House and Ran Away to the South Pacific. Show one more time. Right there. Okay, so the book is by Gordon is about Gordon and his wife who, as the title would suggest, sold their house in Edmonton, Canada, and spent an entire year in different parts of Oceania in the South Pacific. Specifically, he goes to Rotunda, I believe it is, in the Cook Islands, which are owned by New Zealand. And then he flew over to Sydney and stayed in Manly Beach in Sydney for, I think it was about 6 months. It was the greater part of the year. And then I think he spent some time, about a month or so, a little over a month, maybe even like 2 months, in New Zealand, traveling all around New Zealand. So they didn't have like one abode; they just stayed there. And then finally wound up in Fiji. Yeah. Okay, so I didn't really want to like this book just because at times I felt it came off a little trite. Just sort of. Well, what would happen is there would be like a setup in a section, say like a 5-page section, and then at the end of it, there would be just some little twist or a little flip that, well, kind of funny, was just kind of elementary writing. Like it wasn't real in depth. Just kind of, oh, that's cute, whatever. But the problem was the things that were described in this book were actually quite enjoyable just viscerally. So that style kind of worked, just meeting the locals, going out on the beach, dealing with the riffraff, though the riffraff was never overwhelming. It was always just sort of joyous or boisterous without being overly done. Man, I need to shave. Ugh. Out of control. So, yeah, I guess in the first section he went to Rarotonga. Let's see here. Yep. No, Rarotonga. R-A-R-O Tonga. So I guess that's a take on the Tonga Islands. Here he found sort of a very slow-paced, dilapidated society, but one where people had some form of happiness. It seemed like the problems were lack of opportunity, but not deprivation of basic needs. So, or response to the lack of opportunity by destruction of the society by its own civilians. It didn't run real well, but it tended to do all right for itself. He'd enjoy things like a pig cookout or meet at the local squash courts, which are a long leftover from colonial rule. But at this point, had no connotations of colonialism, which is kind of a local thing that the both South Pacificans, the people from that area, as well as, the white settlers, just did to have fun, intermix. What were some of the complaints? Well, I guess some of the complaints were just the lack of uniformity. Like he told the story of when he got on a taxi, and the taxi cab driver said, "I'll be right back." And then he didn't come back for like 40 minutes. And they eventually found out that was just the end of his shift, and he had left without telling, his customers in his cab that he was going to go home. And although that's only one example, that sort of gives a picture of that area. So good quality of life, maybe not the most opportunities, a little bit dilapidated, but things eventually do get done and kind of amble on, kind of on their own accord. Okay, so then he went to Manly Beach, which obviously is a lot more westernized than the Cook Islands. Here he really describes some of, I guess, both the hovels of a big city, which are true anywhere, particularly like an ethnic hovel, but he also described how, although there were kind of apartments that weren't as nice, you know, he complained about his apartment, or when he first got there, like this hotel that was a little bit run down. And also he went over to a friend's house that wasn't in the nicest area. It never seemed like it was just overwhelming, like the city was just falling into ruins, which, I mean, if you look at indicators for Sydney, Australia, you know that that's definitely true, that they do a very good job of keeping their city well upkept, and any city that doesn't have problems is a utopia, which just, you know, doesn't exist. You know, and he talked about how he would meet up with friends and they go to barbecues, and, you know, some humorous event would happen at these barbecues. Yeah, I guess I haven't talked about the triteness of the book, but you know, there'd be some humorous event and the little turn of circumstance that would allow everyone to laugh. And, you know, he also described, obviously, like the beach scene and breakers, you know, gonna go see the penguins, drinking the wine, just sort of a number of the visceral things that go along with it. As well as this is when he started his running to get back in shape for all the bad food he'd been eating. Okay, so that takes us over to New Zealand. Now, he visited a number of areas in New Zealand, Auckland, you know, basically all the way from Auckland down to Queenstown. You know, sipping wines and looking at Art Deco, just sort of the standard boilerplate, but, you know, giving a couple of insights. None are really coming to mind right now, and I guess that kind of speaks to a weakness of the book, is that the theme is just kind of standard. But there were specific instances that gave insight that you couldn't just get from like a travel literature or something like that. But he did sort of the boilerplate travel around New Zealand things. So Auckland, seeing the sort of cafe districts there, going to Ratunga, I believe. No, that's Rarotonga. That's not what it is. Oh, here we go. Here's the map. Going to, well, I guess it doesn't show on here, but, oh yeah, Lake Taupo, Taupo, which is the largest lake in New Zealand, and they also have a number of hot springs and spas around there that you can go to, which is really cool. He went to go see Napier and the large Art Deco area around there, ate at some cafes, went down to Wellington. They went over to Picton, Nelson, huge wine growing regions, Westport, kind of the isolated west coast of the South Island. Driving down there, you know, meeting up with some kids that had nothing better to do in small town other than drag race, which almost ran him off the road. That's actually very similar to what happened to Alexander Elder in his book Straying from the Flock. So there was a lot of interlap. I'd probably say David Elder's was a little bit better book, but each had observations that the other didn't have into New Zealand life and South Pacific life. Let's see, what else? Oh, we went to Franz Josef and Fox Glaciers, the biggest glaciers, two huge glaciers. I've actually been there. Humble brag. I've actually been there, which is really cool. Down to Wanaka and Queenstown, you know, the adventure capital of New Zealand. And then on to Christchurch, kind of the slow ambling capital with its meandering streams and not agrarian, but sort of like rustic, rural reflection of English life, English small town life. I should say that he enjoyed Queenstown quite a bit too. Not really the adventure stuff, but he said that just all the weirdos there really made the town, and I'll attest to this too. All the weirdos there really made the town kind of have an interesting, funky vibe that even if you weren't going on an adventure sport, you could, look at and just be like, yep, that's interesting. Okay, so after Christchurch, he decided to fly on to Fiji. Now, Fiji was very similar to Rarotonga, maybe a little bit more upkept, but he stayed at sort of like a resort. But I feel he stayed at a resort on like the wrong area, because he stayed on a resort in Nadi, which is sort of the getaway to the Malacca Islands, I believe it is. And this is at the very end of the book. The vast majority of the book takes place between the first three, and then just kind of goes on, particularly in Sydney and New Zealand. But the last part just kind of goes to Fiji before they finally go home. I should say their trip didn't actually last a year. I think it lasted like 9 months or something, 6 of which were spent in Sydney. Okay, so yeah, in Fiji, he sort of went to the getaway place, which doesn't have very nice beaches, but is right next, that's on the main island, Viti Levu, or whatever it is. But he didn't decide to go to the Malacca group, which is where all of the, really beautiful beaches and kind of these little specks of islands that are like 500 meters across are. And I felt he really made a mistake. He mentioned it in the book that he could have gone there, but he checked on resorts and everything was too expensive. But I know for a fact that a number of, there are a number that would be out of his price range. There were also a number of areas on these multitude of islands that were within his price range. So there were kind of complaints about that. I guess the big thing that happened there is he had his wife. Oh, no. He had some bad Indian food because one of the things he mentioned is this basically Fiji is split 50-50 between Indo-Fijians, people from the Indian subcontinent, 50%, and 50% native Fijians, who are kind of always in political turmoil and occasionally have coups, although they're always bloodless coups. So kind of changes in government militarily, but without really any danger to the infrastructure of the island or the tourism industry or anything like that. Yeah, and then that was it. He said he enjoyed his time there because it was just kind of a relaxing end after traveling around New Zealand, which, although enjoyable, was just a lot of stuff to see. So he flew back. Now, ooh man, I've got 2 minutes. I think I'm going to do the review in the second part. So hold on. I didn't think I'd actually run it this long, but this is Gordon Copes. So we sold our house and ran away to the South Pacific. And I'll do the review on the book, just my general thoughts after this. Stay tuned, part 2.